Now, she was awarded an MBE for her work increasing young people's awareness of the consequences of violent crime. This was after the death of her son, Jimmy, at just 16 years old. In 2008, a day after his 16th birthday, Jimmy Mizen was with his brother in a bakery when a row broke out between them and teenager Jake Fahri. Fahri threw a glass dish at Jimmy, which smashed and severed a blood vessel in his neck. Fahri was later convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. In June 2023, after serving 14 years, Fahri was released. Earlier this month, newspaper reports identified him as the drill music artist known as 10. Wearing a balaclava in his videos, his songs feature shockingly violent lyrics, with some even seemingly to glorify Jimmy's murder. Fahri is now being recalled to prison, with the probation service saying Jimmy's family deserve better than to see their son's killer shamelessly boasting about his crime. And please would you join me in welcoming Jimmy's mother, Margaret Mizen. This must have been very difficult for you and the family, Margaret, to have Jimmy's story brought up again so publicly, following on the press story about Jake Fahri and his music. When was the first you heard that his music had been played on Radio 1?
It was on, I think it was about Wednesday the 15th of January, about 12 days ago. We got a phone call from a press agency to say that the Sun had an article going in the next day. And we had to wait till that evening, really, to see what the article was. And we thought it was going to be a tiny bit, but it ended up being about 5 pages. And yes, it was a shock to us all. You know, after Jake came out of prison, we kind of put it to one side and wanted to get on with our lives. This just brings it all up again. And, yeah, it's been a very difficult time.
What did you actually think about BBC Radio 1 Extra, that they had actually played he's known as the drill artist 10, and that they had played his music? The fact that he is making a living, it appears, with his music, some of it which have rather violent lyrics.
Well, it was a shock. Obviously, when we first heard, it took a time to take it all in, but it's quite unbelievable. More the fact that any kind of music that is played that incites violence, guns, knives, drugs, has got to be wrong. For our young people in particular. So we were shocked, and I am very saddened that the BBC are playing this music. Hopefully we can have a conversation with them at some point and discuss it and see what we can do together to stop it.
What do you want from that, though, Margaret? Is it an apology you're looking for? Or?
No, I'm not looking for an apology, because that doesn't really mean anything. I'm looking for change. I want to see how they can stop playing this music, because we're losing so many young people. There's a young lad in Birmingham, a boy in Woolwich not very long ago. It's just happening so much. So we need to stop it. We're not going to stop it altogether, because that's unrealistic. But if we can stop the mainstream music channels playing it, that's something.
In your opinion, Margaret, where has the... Because obviously, when people go to prison, they talk about rehabilitation, they do courses, they do certain sort of work. And for a lot of people, it works. You know, they come out and they stay on the straight and narrow, as they call it. But to come out and do something like this, sort of, you know, music that incites violence, where do you think that the rehabilitation has gone wrong here?
I think the thing with rehabilitation, and my husband and I actually have been in prisons, we know it can work, but I think in this case, he wasn't prepared to change. So I think you have to do courses before you can come out. He's obviously done them, but it's made no difference to him. Bear in mind, before he killed Jimmy, I think it was about 2 weeks before, he made a rap song then, and he uploaded it, and it was all about violence and how he wanted to hurt someone. And 2 weeks later, he killed our beautiful boy.
Terrible. Actually, Margaret, I want to say that everybody here, we all have so much admiration for you, for your strength. Now, both Brenda and I know about losing a child.
Yeah.
So we can empathise to a point. Of course, yours was, you know, murder, and that's shocking. I would love to know how, from such pain, you can get yourself, when you've lost a child has been murdered, to the point where you forgive. And, you know, I think that's quite remarkable. I'm being honest here. I don't know if I was in the same position, knowing the pain of losing a child, that I could forgive that easily.
I'm so sorry for your losses, by the way. I mean, we talk about murder being worse, but to lose a child in any circumstances is painful. I do know that. When we talk of forgiveness, people often don't understand, and I'm sure, you know, your viewers are probably going to say, how can that woman forgive? But after I lost Jimmy, firstly, I knew something was missing from my life. And I realised after a while it was my smile. I wasn't smiling anymore. And I didn't want to remember Jimmy all the time with tears. I wanted to remember him with joy. And the only way I could do that was by forgiving the boy. But also, it meant I could get up in the mornings and see the sun shining and the flowers blossoming. And I couldn't do that if I didn't forgive. So I do forgive him, but I don't want to be his best friend. And it doesn't mean it doesn't matter, because what happened to Jimmy does matter. It matters to me and my family and all his friends. But by forgiving him, it's allowed me to lead the new life that I've had to lead, because after we lost Jimmy, I had to make a decision. How do I lead this life? And I'm doing it by my forgiveness. And I know he's come out and I know he's taunting us, but I'll never stop using the words of forgiveness, peace and hope. That is my life.
And also, like Laura and Brenda, the charity, your foundation.
The charity work that you set up a charity in his name, the Mizen Foundation, and that is to spread, with the hope of spreading positivity within the young community. How is that going?
The charity's going really well. I mean, Barry and I, there are different parts of the charity. The main is the fact that we give talks for change. So we travel the country visiting schools, sharing Jimmy's legacy with the young people. We share about 2 boys, one who lived 500 metres from the other, one who was so kind and one who was so unkind. But it keeps us really busy, and we're invited into many, many schools. But it's about empowering our young people to be the change makers and the peacemakers. That's what we're there for.
And can you sense from those children the power of your words, that, you know, they might read something, hear something, but when they've got that boy's mother and father standing in front of them explaining the pain, you know, the loss of somebody over something ridiculous, an altercation, do you think they're really taking that in?
I think they do, but I think it's more about the way we describe it to them, because we're doing it in an uplifting way. So I'm not standing there saying, you know, we don't want them to feel sorry for us, we want to empower them. And I was in a primary school only last week, and do you know what? I had those young people in the palm of my hands, and that's where we need to get them. And so they're ready to go out and be the peacemakers.
You mentioned Barry there, your husband. You've been married 47 years.
Oh, my gosh. A long time.
A long time. And you've obviously got each other through this, but, you know, the statistics are quite high, aren't they, of people that struggle after a loss. What is it? Where did you two find your strength?
Well, we've obviously found our strength through our faith. You know, I'm a Catholic, and that's helped me through many, many things in my life. You know, we have a daughter with Down syndrome, and it has its ups and downs and things. So every time something has happened in my life, I've clung more to my faith. And Barry and I were able to do that together, and I think that's made the difference. So in those early days, and I'm not going to lie to you, it was painful. And it doesn't matter how much faith you have, that pain is still there. But, you know, we'd go to bed at night and we'd be crying and crying and crying for Jimmy. We'd be holding each other tight, but we'd be praying as well. And do you know what? That allowed us to get up and cope with all that we had to cope with. So Barry and I, well, he's my best friend. And to this day, you know, and I'm hoping he's watching as well. But, yeah, I do love him. And, you know, to get together, we've been able to deal with the loss of Jimmy. And I think that's made a big difference for me.
I mean, I have heard you speak, and it is so powerful. And I was so impressed, because what you're offering is this message of hope through such tragedy and such loss. I found that extraordinary, and that was many years ago, actually. It wasn't long, as you know, after you'd lost Jimmy. So to find that strength, I think, is amazing. Do you always have him in your mind when you're doing that? It's about him, it's about keeping his memory alive.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's my life. You know, remembering Jimmy, sharing Jimmy's story, and he's in my thoughts every minute of every day. Oh, yeah, no, he was a beautiful, beautiful young man, but you know what, so are all my family. They're lovely, and I'm blessed to have a lot of children.
Yes, you had to go on as well for your other children. Listen, we wish you and Barry and the rest of the family well, and we're so sorry, as we said, that this has all come back into the public domain again, but thank you. I do just have to read a statement from the BBC, because we were talking there about BBC One Radio Extra. A BBC spokesperson has said, we were not aware of this individual's background when 2 different tracks were played last year, and the BBC in no way condone his actions. At no point did we ever play the lyrics that were quoted by The Sun and other media, and his music never featured on any BBC playlists. One Extra takes our editorial responsibility very seriously. We have strict guidelines in place before any content is broadcast. Whilst we take into account the need for creativity and artistic integrity, One Extra does not glamorise violence, and decisions on music are made on a case-by-case basis. Also, the Ministry of Justice, we asked why Jake Fahri was released. A probation service spokesman said, "Our thoughts remain with Jimmy Mizen's family. Decisions to release life-sentence prisoners are made by the Independent Parole Board after a thorough risk assessment. They are subject to strict conditions and supervision and will be sent back to prison if they break these, as this case shows." That's another subject, obviously, he's been recalled, which we don't have time for, Margaret. So, you know, maybe we'll talk about that with you another day.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
But for today,
thank you so much for
and our
having me.
best to you and the family. Margaret Mizen, everybody.
Thank you.